Today I'm going to be going over how to know what hook size you need to use for your respective project. So if you're starting from something from scratch, you have a couple different options. So if you're never sure, I always recommend looking at your yarn label and seeing what they recommend. This is a regular Red Heart Super Saver size 4 worsted weight yarn, and it recommends a size 5.5 millimeter hook. As far as I'm aware, every yarn label has like their recommended hook size. You don't have to use that size if you don't want to, but if you don't know where to start, this is definitely a good space to start. Here is what a 5.5 millimeter hook looks like. Let's see, yep, 5.5. And then this is what a 5 millimeter hook looks like. You can tell there's just a slight difference between the two, but it does change the tension of your stitches. So a 5.5 will be bigger than a 5. Your stitches will be. The other thing is if you are working on a project and you made the project and it just wasn't the right size, what do? Like, you use the exact hook, you use the exact yarn and everything, but it wasn't quite the size that they advertised. So in that case, if the pattern has something called a gauge, you need to work that gauge. So this is the exact same amount of yarn, or the exact same amount of stitches, the exact same yarn. The only difference is that these are 3 different hook sizes. I believe this one was 9, this one was like a 5, and then this one was like a 3.25 or something like that. It's in my video, how to resize any crochet plush pattern. The point is that your hook size completely changes the size of your stitches. So if you make a project and it doesn't end up the exact size it's supposed to, even though you did everything exactly correct, what you need to do is you need to try making a gauge and see the difference. So some patterns will include one, and if that's the case, you just need to follow their gauge until you get the right size. So for example, if it says that 3 rows of 5 single crochet will be equal to 1 square inch, then you need to use whatever hook size you get until you get those exact measurements doing that. So basically, you would crochet a little square that is 5 single crochets by 3 rows, and you would just do that until you get the exact square inch. It doesn't matter what hook size you use, because everybody's a little different. You just want to make sure that you match their gauge regardless of hook size, and then if you're able to match their gauge, even if it's not the same hook size that they recommend, your project should end up being the exact size that it needs to be based off of that. These are just various examples of different things. For stuff like hats and scarves, personally, I always recommend the 5 millimeter hook. It's a pretty standard basic hook size. It's a decent size. It's got stitches that aren't too loose, but they aren't really tight either. And in my experience, most of my crochet friends seem to do okay with the 5 millimeter hook. But pretty much it's going to be looking at your yarn and using the recommended size, or swatching a gauge based off of the pattern that you are making at the time. And if they don't have a gauge and you make it and it's not the correct size, then what you're going to want to do is swatch a gauge using the hook that you used to make their project, and then you're going to swatch it in different sizes until you get about the correct size difference you need. So if you make a project and it's like this big and you need it to be like this big, well, you do the exact same amount of stitches with this hook. It's a little bit bigger, but not big enough. Then you do it with a different hook and you get something that's like twice the size, then you're going to want to use that hook, basically. And that's how you can tell what hook size you need to use for your project.